Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills. We're at Sunday now, so we got 2 games Saturday, triple header Sunday. It starts at 1 o'clock. Bills favored by 8.5 here at home against the Broncos in our 2-7 matchup. Again, if Buffalo wins, probably playing Baltimore the following week. If the Ravens win, if Denver wins, they're definitely going to Kansas City as the 7 seed.
Yeah, I mean, this is the game.
Jim Kelly, John Elway.
Yeah,
playoff rematch.
Jim Kelly, John Elway. Everyone was kind of bummed because we wanted to see Joe Burrow and the Bengals go to Buffalo. But I think it's kind of meant that everyone's sleeping on this game, which is actually pretty fun. Denver's defense is legit. They have arguably the best pass rush in the NFL. They have Patrick Surtain on the back end, who's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And then for the majority of the time in the second half of the season, Bo Nix has looked really good. I mean, he made inroads on a Rookie of the Year conversation that was dead and buried at the halfway point. In the second half, people are like, wait, Bo Nix? Bo Nix might be Rookie of the Year. Now, I think that was maybe a little bit too far, but the point is, Bo Nix and the offense have become serious factors as well. This is not a walkover for Buffalo.
No, it's not. I mean, I think I like where Buffalo is this year, right? I was saying a lot of the same stuff last year. The last couple years, they've taken more pressure off of Josh Allen generally. There's fewer games where it's like, hey, everything else is failing. Break the Josh Allen glass. It's emergency time. He's got to run the ball every third down. They've found different ways to win, and I do think one of these years, that strategy with Josh Allen is in the Bills is going to pay off on one of these runs. What I was saying about the fear thing is the Ravens do match up against them pretty well in round 2, but to get there, Buffalo's got to get by Denver, the defense, the pass rush, and what they've been able to do with several players creating pressure. Nick Bonito and Zach Allen and Jonathan Cooper, they are just good across the board as far as a defensive front goes. But Josh Allen's also been the best in the league at sack avoidance. And I just wanted to talk about that for a minute here. Pressure to sack rate, where the heck is that? I don't even know if we phrased that the right way when we made up that stat years ago. Only 8% of his pressure dropbacks is he sacked. And I saw somebody bring up this point. I mean, he was only sacked, what was the total? 14 times this year. Those are like Dan Marino type seasons. So you've got cyborg quarterback.
The offensive line, according to PFF, has only surrendered 4 sacks.
Yeah, and that's insane. And that's a QB stat. That's a QB stat, not an offensive line stat, right? They give up pressure.
Well, it's both, but yeah.
It's far more QB than the sack stat is more QB than offensive line. I hate offensive line sacks allowed. You remember how we graded it, right? You say this is a -1. The guy's completely by him. Whether it becomes a sack, a hit, or a hurry is all on the quarterback and the scheme.
Yeah,
but it's a QB in a system stat, right? You need to have a place to throw the ball, and the quarterback needs to get rid of it. I'm not saying he's running around avoiding sacks all the time. That's not really what sack avoidance is.
I mean, it's both. Like, if you have a garbage offensive line, you were going to hemorrhage an awful lot of sacks, regardless of who your quarterback is. Equally, if you have an amazing offensive line, you're probably not going to give up many sacks, even if your quarterback is not tremendously good at sack avoidance. So I don't think it's either or. I think they are both major factors in the stat. So I think Buffalo's offensive line allowing merely 4 sacks is both a reflection on how good their offensive line has been this year and a reflection that Josh Allen has been superhuman at avoiding sacks. This game features 2 of the top 4 offensive lines in PFF pass blocking efficiency. The Broncos are number 1 in large part. Again, this is your system part. Quarterback, offensive line, and system. Bo Nix, generally has a pretty low average depth of target. Ball comes out quickly, and he's pretty good at getting rid of it. So that all goes together. Denver's good offensive line. System is that kind of system. And Bo Nix, you put those 3 things together, and you have an offensive line that's only given up 98 total pressures over the course of the season and has the best pass blocking efficiency in the game. Buffalo's is similar. They're at 134, whereas the worst teams in the NFL are like well over 200.
Trying to find a stat. Oh, here it is. Sam Schwartzenstein, just to back up the sack and Josh Allen's ability to avoid negative plays this year and how important it is. Those are good stats by you, both offensive lines, not giving up a ton of pressure or sacks. So Sam has a stat here, sacks EPA, like he calls it SCRAC EPA. Scrambles and sacks. Scrack.
Okay.
Well, that's good. So if you combined EPA gained lost, right? You EPA on scrambles and sacks combined. Across the league, it's almost certainly negative, right? Because most quarterbacks will have, 30 sacks or some big number, and most sacks are pretty bad for your EPA, and not every scramble is even positive. So almost everybody skews negative when you combine those two numbers, right? And it's some level of QB mobility and getting rid of the ball or whatever. Josh Allen's the only QB in the league with positive SCRAC, EPA, Sam, scrambles plus sacks. And I will say, if there is one somewhat blind spot in the PFF grading, it's that maybe there's not enough negative effect on QBs that take sacks. There's a negative effect, but maybe not enough relative to value, right? And so that would be one of those hidden areas that I think is a Josh Allen stat, but also a Joe Brady stat, and they're James Cook and Ty Johnson, and using those guys out of the backfield really well. They've done a nice job of getting the ball out of Allen's hands quicker, faster, relying on yards after the catch more than ever, and they're just not taking negative plays. And so I think that was just to me, that's a massive stat, because even just like 2 weeks ago, Denver sacked Joe Burrow 7 times. And not all those are pass rush. A lot of that's, hey, they cover really well. He's got to hold the ball, and he's got to take a negative play. Allen has not done that, and he's done that way better than a guy like Burrow throughout his career.
One of the best comps, actually, or comparisons, contrasts is the word I was looking for that is Josh Allen versus Baker Mayfield this year. Josh Allen's pressure to sack rate is 8%. Baker Mayfield's pressure to sack rate is 25%. So 3 times effectively more often when they're pressured will that turn into a sack.
That's why I'm saying that one's more QB driven, because it's when you're pressured.
Well, specifically because Tampa Bay is in the top 4 of offensive line pass blocking efficiency numbers. So they're in the same group as Denver and Buffalo, the teams we're talking about now, but that's resulted in 40 sacks for Baker Mayfield versus 14 for Josh Allen. That's the quarterback difference, right?
Yep.
So in this comparison, you've got 2 very good pass blocking offensive lines, and then when they allow pressure, you've got a quarterback like Josh Allen who has been superhuman at avoiding sacks, and you've got a quarterback like Baker Mayfield who tends to skew towards getting sacked in those situations. Like, we can all picture the classic Baker Mayfield play of like pinballing around in the pocket and eventually getting dragged down for a sack. That's the difference, right? That's part of where the quarterback makes a huge difference.
So yeah, I think it's a big part in this game, especially for a Denver defense that, again, gets pressure from a lot of different places in a lot of different ways, and tied to their coverage unit as well.
Yeah, but Bo Nix has been really good at that as well. Like,
these
are two strengths.
College.
Yeah, these are 2 strengths. Quarterbacks that are both very difficult to bring down and create negative sack type plays. They've both been spectacular at that.
I'm just checking the Buffalo weather, because you have to
20 degrees and partly cloudy.
Yeah. And I was going to say Saturday, though, I see snowflakes.
Snowflakes.
Monday, I see snowflakes.
Well, this is like if you've
Sunday, though, it's clear.
You've seen the map. The entire country is set to freeze this weekend. And obviously Buffalo tends to be a place where it freezes bad. So
I see a high of 32.
There you go. But anyway, this game is not – none of the games I don't think are going to be particularly affected by weather.
They're not. Maybe we'll have to wait till divisional round to get some weather. But probably, unless the Ravens get upset, probably the last home game for Buffalo. Anyway, anything else in this game specifically that you're keeping an eye on?
I'm curious to see how Buffalo's defense does. I mean, the offense has been – it's been hit or miss, but it's been more like how much they need Josh Allen to be Superman over the year. So you've got obviously that element. Does he need to be that against Denver's defense? How much can he do? But then you've got Buffalo's defense, which has been lit up at times this season, has been really good at times this season. A lot of that has been injury dependent, how healthy they are in a given game. But like Bo Nix, in a lot of ways, brings similar threats to Josh Allen. Now, in a lot of ways, he doesn't, right? They're very different players, but he's a scrambling threat the same way Josh Allen is, right? One of the ways he's been able to avoid sacks has been taken off and scrambling, and he's got like 400 plus yards scrambling. He's led the team in rushing several times this season. Bo Nix has been able to keep drives going and keep the offense on the field and, buy themselves a lot more opportunities to make plays in an offense that is not as explosive, is not as high threat as a team like Buffalo's. But he keeps them on the field pretty well by extending those drives, by making plays scrambling, by avoiding the negative plays, always giving them, third and manageable as opposed to third and death. So, I'm curious to see how Buffalo's defense does at slowing down Bo Nix.
Yeah, and I saw, maybe it was Brett Coleman, someone else mentioned it, like every January I'm always a little worried, is what he said. Always a little worried about Buffalo's defensive interior. And I think there's something to that, right? They've had games throughout the years where they don't like to put 8 men in the box a ton, and they'll give it up on the ground or whatever. I don't know if Denver is equipped to really take advantage of that though, with their rushing attack, below average running attack as far as EPA per play goes, running back by committee. They had these spurts where they can create some big plays on the ground, but like you said, there's been a lot of games where Bo Nix is the leading rusher as a scrambler. It's not really a run heavy Denver team. I don't think that can take advantage of Buffalo up front.
No, I don't think that would be how they have joy if they have it in this game.
All right, man. Let's make some picks here. Buffalo by 8.5. By the way, I didn't even realize the split here. The first 3 games are all AFC, and then we're on to the NFC. Buffalo by 8.5 here, Sunday at 1.
I'm going to go with Denver, keeping it closer than that. I think Buffalo will win, but I think Denver will cover it.
I am too. And Josh Allen legacy stuff. I mean, just still looking for that Super Bowl. I
don't think this game. This is not the same as Lamar Jackson's narrative. I don't think this game affects. It maybe affects it if he gets bounced, but I don't think this game really affects anything for Josh Allen.
He's generally played well in the playoffs and been.
Josh Allen needs to go to Kansas City and win in that game. That's his narrative.
I mean, if Buffalo gets through this game, you're talking about having to go to Baltimore and go to Kansas City.
Yeah,
you're set up to make that epic type of run and go play, the NFC champion, of course, in the Super Bowl if they could pull it all off.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.